Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and welcome back to another Silmarillion field battle. I think we did this map well, for me it was 5 minutes ago. I'm actually batch recording a whole bunch of things so I can release them throughout the week. But there's another match you guys are going to see that's done on this exact same map. A lot of people like to play on Dimbar. I think they feel it's relatively fair. It is one of the kind of flatter, more open maps. We're playing it on winter settings, so we can't hide in the trees nearly as much. But yeah, so I'm actually in this game, which is fun. I'm be playing as the Dominion of Tol-in-Gaurhoth, and my ally, I believe, I think it's Angband or Angband. No, it's definitely Angband. There you go. All those fearsome beasties and things like that. I think our opponents are... Oh, I can't remember. It's been a while since I played this game, but we'll see them in a few minutes here. Let's go through my army composition. Of course, playing as the Dominion of Tol-in-Gaurhoth. I've got 2 units here of the Hishbukraz cavalry, and this we'd actually played the opposing team I think once before, and they beat us quite badly. So this is sort of our comeback shot at redemption, and we've tailored our strategy to that pretty well exclusively to just be very aggressive and put a lot of pressure on them early on. But yeah, 2 of the units here of the Hishbukraz cavalry, obviously they've gotten a little bit bigger than what they are in the current live version. I think they're like 75 in the live version. Individually, the models are weaker, but it does add more volume of fire, which just overall makes the Hishbukraz as a Gulkalab unit, which is mostly missile. That's where a lot of its usefulness comes from. It just makes them better at their job. So there's gonna be 2 of them there. They're actually a lot cheaper as well. Like, a lot of the cavalry has remained very cheap for Tol-in-Gaurhoth, but some of the infantry are more expensive, so I think that's a little bit reasonable. I've also got detachment of hunters, 2 detachments of hunters, a couple units here of the trappers, which is the orcish version of the hunter javelins. I think they do a little bit less damage, but they've got more men in a unit, and they've got, I think the amount of ammunition they have works out to be about the same. But if they take losses, then they end up losing more ammunition, I think, than other models. I think that's how it shakes out. I don't know. I did the math once. But yeah, 2 units there of the Scar High Trappers, good for dealing with armor and things like that. And of course, we have the Gijak Skadas. Can't really go to battle as Tol-in-Gaurhoth without these very strong class of like core units. And they're going to have their armor upgrade. These are like the chosen orcs of Sauron, the Lord of Wolves. Got some more Scarahai over here as well. I've got 1, 2... I think I just have 2 units of the Scarahai, actually. I play very weird, kind of all over the place compositions like this, and this is definitely not an exception to that rule. We have the detachment of the Hishbukraz, which are... I believe they're still locked morale. I don't know if they have relentless, but they do have armor piercing, so they do kind of trade that off a little bit. So you can disrupt them and be annoying, if I'm correct. Can disrupt them and be annoying and stop them from doing damage, but which you can't do to the other unit, but they do hit harder against armor, which is really nice. I've got 2 units here of the Laugskaraz to match my 2 units of Hishbukraz, and they are a medium. In a lot of ways, I guess they're kind of a hybrid unit since they do have armor piercing, and therefore their charge is armor piercing, so they can function a little bit like a lancer. They are an axe, and a warg unit as well, so their charge is a bit higher than your average melee cavalry unit, which I think is capped at like 3 charge or like 2 charge or something like that. These guys can go quite higher than that. I think they're sitting at like 11 or something. So when you pair that with their base damage, they can be very versatile, even when charging it to the front against certain kinds of infantry. And overall, just a good unit. They're here in relatively large numbers to be irritating and to defend the Hishbukraz and hopefully get some nice flanking and rear charges. Out front here, you're going to see another Berserker unit. These are the, the Scarahai Pit Fighters. And just like any Berserker unit, if you can get a nice charge off on them, you'll lose control of the unit, but they get a new animation set and they get area attacks, and they're just completely destructive. A little bit larger than some of the other units, but they do have less HP. Most of the Berserkers, I think, clock in at like 3 HP. These guys are going to be 2. But overall, because they have a larger unit size, it's sort of a trade-off. Individual models are easier to kill, but while you have more of them, you can do a lot more damage. So it's I think, very orcish in design. We've got 2 units here of the Mangonel, and they're going to be a couple of Legionnaire units. And then way in the back, I've got my Hishpukraz Ash Priests. And while they don't have their armor piercing anymore, they still hit like absolute terrains, and it's the best place to have your general, I think. Is that a 3rd unit? Do I have 3 of the... I do. What do you know? I have 3 of the Javelin Wards. I don't think I have anything hidden. We'd probably see it if I did. So let's move on over and have a look at my ally's army. It's going to be the army of Angband, played by Panthan of Barsoom. He's got 1, 2... 2? Is it just 2? 1, 2, 3 Alberts. Blah! And he's got a couple of the Ravagers here as well with those 2-handed axes. Again, not armor piercing, but generally very annoying and extremely dangerous if they manage to countercharge cavalry here. Really, if they get their claws into anything after a charge, they hit like absolute trains. Arbalists out in the front. Looks like we've got maybe a detachment. And then a full unit. And then we've got Tormentors, who are the mace units. 2 units there of the Tormentors. Detachment of the Tormentors as well. Bulldogs. We've got the Troll Guard of Gothmog over here as well. Do we have any Balrogs? No, we do not. Not on the table today. On the table. Ugh, I played too much Warhammer on the field today. Reavers of Anfaglyph. They've changed a fair amount. They're now one of the only Orcish units that have the disciplined morale response, and they've also got these precursor javelins as well. So they can do a little bit of extra damage. They've got good terrain bonuses. One of the few Angband units that isn't heavy infantry, and therefore can fight quite competently in the woods and in various other kinds of terrain. I think the orcs across the board also get a bonus from fighting in snow. I don't think it's as high as their desert bonus, but they do get that, so that's something to account for as well. Wretches of Angband, 2 units of them here to defend the flanks and just generally do their thing. Wolf Riders of Angband, obviously they've gotten a little bit bigger, and being heavy cavalry, they can be quite hard to shift with those high armor values and shield values, but they just don't do a lot of damage. The Wolf Riders of Angband are not going to win any competitions fighting against other cavalry most of the time, but they're excellent roadblocks. A lot of things are going to have a hard time getting through them, and they do just enough damage, especially against other cavalry units, that you can't ignore them completely as a threat. They are quite slow, though, so that's something to bear in mind. Uruk here with their completely screwed up UVs. I thought I fixed that years ago. I don't know how this happened again, but hopefully I can fix it. But they're largely the same, although they do rely a little bit more on their missiles. They're not quite as fearsome in CQB as they used to be. That role has now been definitively shifted into the court of the Balrogs. So the Balrogs are much better like melee elephants, and they've got really strong morale buffing capabilities, but the Urloki are sort of backline harassment units that are, I think, fairly user-friendly to use. Moving on up here, we've got the Scourges of Gothmog, a really nice unit for fighting against the elves. They're one of the few orcs that can just go toe-to-toe with them. They've got high charge, they've got great melee defense. Overall, they're just a strong unit. That being said, they don't have a shield, and they don't have a lot of armor, so they're quite vulnerable to missile fire. I think they also cause fear. That's something to note as well. Let's go ahead, fast forward here. You can see that by the frame count, this is obviously a very aggressive game. So things are going to happen, and they're going to happen really quickly. So I'm going to try and slow it down a little bit. I feel like we missed a few things in our last game. Pardon me. So yeah, I'm going to try and slow it down a little bit, and maybe run at about 60% speed or something, so we don't miss too much. There we go. It's getting all settled there into the ruins, and I'm getting kind of where I need to be. There's actually some hidden areas over here. So believe it or not, these wargs are actually hiding, and that's to sort of leave a gap on one side of my army for my opponent to want to move into, to look at that and think that's a mistake. I can get in there and do a lot of damage, and then obviously try and punish them for it. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and see who we're fighting today. It's gonna be Doriath again, or perhaps for the first time if you're not watching these videos in sequence. They're going to be played by Captain Gervais. He's got some shield bearers here, and they're going to be backing up his mounted company. More mounted company over here. We've got the Doriath and Blung with their terrifying football helmets with the axe blade on them. Wouldn't want to take a headbutt from one of these guys. One of the few armor-piercing close quarters units, in any case, that Doriath has remaining to them. The other one being the Tol-in-Gaurhoth, and their other more ready sources of AP largely come from missiles and cavalry charges. Got some Axe Guard over here. Just one? No, there's definitely more here. Rangers of the Girdle. Shield Bearers of Region. I am going a little bit faster through this because I gave a very long, in-depth explanation in the previous video. So I'm just operating from the assumption that you've probably watched that one first and that you have a good handle on Doriath as a faction and some of the changes that have come in to the overhaul. But I will mention new ones as we go through. Marksmen of Region hanging out over here with their Silverthorn arrows. Not really a damage-oriented unit, at least from range. But they can be very irritating, and against light units like cavalry, shooting medium cavalry from the rear, ignoring that shield bonus, they can be potentially very dangerous. That being said, most of the time they're not going to do a ton of damage, but they are very good at creating and maintaining space and being extremely disruptive against other skirmish units. So it does definitely have a place, and then they've got two-handed swords afterwards, so you can figure that out. In the back here, we got some Axemen of the Girdle, sort of very mid to close range skirmish units. The axes can do quite a lot, and they're a decent enough axe unit after the fact. And they are also quite light, so they do get some pretty substantial bonuses in the forest in addition to that. So, fairly versatile unit. It can be shut down fairly easily when people are able to put a lot of pressure onto them. Obviously, they're very light. And if they get caught in like their throwing cycles and caught before they can use all their ammunition, then they are of a little bit more limited units. While they are usefulness, while they're throwing is generally when these kind of units are at their most vulnerable, and that's the opportunity you have to really cut through their numbers if that's something that you feel is tactically and strategically important. Moving on up here, another unit of the Marksmen. We've got Catapult, because of course we have a nice little Catapult. A lot of siege weapons have had their engine health increased quite dramatically, so things aren't going to kill them nearly as easily. Catapults, I think, have a little bit extra ammunition. I think they're slightly less accurate. Not hugely, but it does mean that you will miss the occasional shot more often. And that's mostly to keep them from being too oppressive, I think. But it is still something that you want to view as a threat. You want to act accordingly. So you'll probably see me go loose formation over on the other side eventually. More Axemen of the Girdle right here. Shield Bearers of Region. We saw how stubborn this unit can be in the previous game, which again, if you haven't watched, I recommend you go and do so. It's a really close game between some pretty good players and some very evenly matched factions. Yeah, we saw just how long it can take to kill these units, so they can be a very, very big problem, especially for a lot of my Orcish units. They just don't have a lot of... They can't outlast them, and they don't generally have enough damage to kill them quickly, so units like this can be a really big stumbling stone. More Rangers of the Girdle over here, more Axe Guard of Region, and I think that's it, unless he's got some hidden Outrider units, and I think it's fair to say he probably does, maybe. I didn't see any Cuthalim. Yeah, the Cuthalim are more expensive than the Doriath. He did bring two of the Mounted Company, but he could do that before. I think it's fair to say, based on sort of the budget of this army, that there's probably a hidden unit or two, maybe some Tol-in-Gaurhoth and things like that. Anyway, moving on over here to the Elves of the Falas, being played by Lord of Belegost. He's got Rangers of Berthombar, light archers. They kind of do what's advertised on the tin. Nothing really mysterious or overly special about this unit, but they do have some good numbers and they are relatively cheap, so they can be good at just suppressing enemy skirmish units and doing all the things that archers do well. Marines of Eglarst over here, they have changed a little bit. You're able to bring more of them as the Falas, as sort of thrown weapons are very much their thing. So you can bring more of these Hunter Javelins than other people. You can bring, I think, 4 instead of 3, which is the new standard. So that's very significant. And I think they have an extra... I don't know if they have extra ammunition or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't want to give you bad information. So, not sure about that. But you can definitely bring a lot more of them. So if we look here, we're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he didn't even have to go over to the red in order to get those. But it's a big investment. They're quite expensive. And then afterwards, you've got spear units. Yes, they can do their whole shield wall thing, and that's useful, but they're not going to kill a whole lot. That's going to be the job of other units in the roster, such as, for example, the Seafarers of Brithambar. I think they're rocking a solid 10 damage at this point without any buffs or upgrades, etc., etc. They've also got some terrain bonuses, which can be very useful, especially for the Falathrim in the desert. They're sort of one of those desert... I was trying to think of terrain bonuses that would work for the elves, and this particular brand of elves, and the only thing I can think of is desert, because they live on beaches, they can fight in the sand. It's crazy, but regardless, they do have bonuses in the desert, and that can be very useful. The Seafarers of Brithambar, I believe, also have the expendable trait, so instead of being 140 strong, they are 160, plus another 5 from being Sindar, so 165, and then the extra 3 there comes from these little banner people and officers. So yeah, a really nice unit, one of the few really good answers I think that they have to armor, which when you're fighting Angband, of course you're going to want to bring a lot of them, and naturally Belegost has brought, you got 4 of them right here. So a lot of anti-armor here at the core of his army, and of course, for some reason Belegost really vibes with 2 catapults. I see it a lot from him, and this game is no different. So you're going to have an artillery battery here, a ton of nasty armor-piercing surprises for Angband. Then you've got some Marines of Brithambar, who of course have their harassment javelins, a little bit more AP. Look at that. Is that a 5th unit there of the maces? And then we have the Mariners. So the Mariners, this will be interesting. I need to change the way this projectile looks, because a lot of people assume that it does damage because it's a fireball. And therefore, I see fireball. I hit things with fireball. Thing that got hit by fireball should die, right? And most of the time, that would be correct. So I need to maybe fix the visual language on this unit. But what it actually does is kind of cool. So this is a disruption unit. So it'll toss its little fireballs, balls of light, whatever. And then units that get caught in that blast, it will repeatedly create explosions that knock units around, throw them around. It's obligatory that it has a damage characteristic. I think it's like 1. So occasionally it will get extremely lucky and actually kill something, but don't let that fool you. This is purely a disruption spell. It's going to, cause explosions on the ground that throw things around. It can be very disruptive for formation fighting factions like Boar, for example, and like Angband. So when used in the right way, and because it's got so much range as well, you don't necessarily have to... He doesn't have to shoot this at Angband. If he wanted to shoot this at me and be extra annoying, then absolutely that's an option. So you can support your teammates with it, you can support yourself, you can do whatever you want with it, but don't expect it to do a ton of damage. That's kind of not what it's there for. That being said, units... Actually, I think because it's an explosion, even if units have Relentless, they can't pass through it because they'll just get tossed off their feet. Whereas if it was something like the smoke bombs, which I don't think you guys have seen, but you may see in the future, units with Relentless, cavalry, things like that could pass through it. In this case, cavalry can pass through it because you can't throw cavalry around. You just can't and be able to, which is not how it works. But yeah, so kind of a cool, very niche unit. And then it's got multiple HP and I think Relentless and some other things. So it's not utterly helpless in melee, but there's only 20 men, so don't really expect them to carry the day for you. Anyway, that's that. Got some Champions of Eglarist over here. They've been moved from a medium to a heavy cavalry unit, as I'm sure you can well see. And they're melee cavalry. They do well enough. Over here in the forest, they're not going to be too happy about it. I think maybe he was trying to hide them, but heavy units, even medium cavalry, unless there's like a special faction trait that overrules that particular imperative, they can't hide. They can't hide in the woods. They can't really hide anywhere. It's those light cavalry units predominantly who hide, and that's to give a little bit more identity, I suppose, to the lighter factions. So, pardon me, I think that's going to be it. I think we're ready to go. We're going to kick this off real fast. So our plan, when we were playing against these 2 people... Oh, there's my mangonels going off. Let's see if they actually managed to hit something. Nope. So the mangonels work a little bit differently. They will also do... Yeah, I see that like cycling explosion. And every time that explosion cycles, there's a small kill zone that gets activated, and anything caught within it will instantly get cooked. I don't think that they don't really explode the way they used to anymore. Oof. Yeah, there goes one of my mangonels. Poor me. Poor me indeed. I think he took a bunch of like flaming catapults to the face, and I would definitely do it. Oh, ouch! That hurts a lot. My poor catapult crew, or mangonel crew. But yeah, so as I was saying, our strategy, I believe, was to just kind of keep Captain Gervais busy and avoid fighting a Doriath army head-to-head with Tol-in-Gaurhoth infantry, and then just absolutely double down on crushing his ally. So you can see Angband getting themselves into position. If you look over in the woods here, I think you'll see... Yeah, you'll see some of my cavalry as well. So I've got 2 of the Hishbukras. I've got Laugskaras here as well. And you're going to see this a lot. And I'm starting to realize that this is a thing. And I apparently knew this was a thing subconsciously, but, you know, not explicitly. 3 units. 3 units seems to be, I think, the minimum for, you know, attacking, flanking, things like that, in order to, you know, sort of maximize the amount of damage that you're going to be able to do. And you can always fairly reliably expect 1 unit to get absolutely devastated on average, and the other units are like, you know, 1 to 2 of those units in that group of 3 are there to sort of enable your other troops to do whatever it is that they want to do. That seems to be the optimal number. It could just be, you know, seeing noise and random static as humans tend to do, but it's something I'll keep an eye on because I'm kind of interested in that. There's definitely a psychological component to gaming and competitive kind of things like this. In any case, so Angband's troops causing absolute panic. Now, this is a really good tactic, and I think quite smart on Panthen's part. Units like this that are this close to the front line can be basically ignored by high mass units like the Trolls. The Trolls will just smash right through, and now they've gotten into a unit of Marines of Eglarest, and at least 1 of these units has been shut down, right? There's still 3 more. Oh, ouch. Looks like the Urloki doing their thing. Oh yeah, they're really putting the pressure on the Urloki, eh? These are actually Marines of Berthalmar. What do you know? I think they're going after the Urloki, but I don't know why you would do that. Oh, nasty! By fire be purged. A little bit funny to watch a fire drake get cooked by big flaming missiles, but yeah, some really nice backline pressure there from Lord Belagost into those Urloki, really preventing them from being, like, overly useful. I think they're actually all dead. Yep. Unless I'm missing something, all of those Urloki are dead. They got focus fire down. But when you look over on this side, this is where it becomes important. That, like, Angband unit and the sort of distraction Carnifex that is the Urloki, I'm now able to get into and start chewing apart some of the softer underbelly of this army. And I've again brought 2 of these units out here to distract those champions, managing to, I guess, you know, keep Belagost on his toes. There's only 2 cavalry here. It's not enough to shut down all of our cavalry at the same time. Wolf Riders of Angband coming up in support. Nice hammer and anvil here, and that's going to thin out those macemen of Berthalmar. And with all this extra Angband pressure as well, you're going to see this front line here very, very quickly begin to crumble away. A nice engagement here from Panthen, not throwing his heavily armored units into the front of these seafarers. The Reavers of Unfouled will trade really nice with the Seafarers of Berthalmar. They don't have enough armor to make that AP actually, you know, meaningful. So really nice engage here from Panthen. That front line of Seafarers starting to fall away quite a lot here, although he has taken some pretty significant damage. Like that back line with the catapults and all that kind of stuff, it has certainly mattered. The Marines of Eglarest here now being swamped, and things are just going any way but the way he wants it to for the Lord of Belagost right now. We're swamping him with Cav, shutting down all the things that are important to him. Counterattack here from that cavalry, potentially going to allow for a partial surround or some rear shots there from the Hishbukras. Another unit of Hishbukras now able to make it into the back lines. These Laugskaras are absolute heroes in this game. This unit of 55 Laugskaras just running around, causing all kinds of chaos and panic. I've only got the 1 over here. You can see that I've got Yeah, second unit of Lugskaraz in the back, and a whole bunch of hidden units here as well, pit fighters and things like that. And we'll see how that becomes important a little bit later on when fighting Doriath. More wargs in here, just trying to overload these guys, pressure them enough so that they rout. And now I'm going to be able to just bring my wargs pretty well straight through here. And that's just going to allow my Lugskaraz to disengage and open up some juicy opportunities for some nice rear charges. Those catapults, though, taking an absolute toll on this Angband force. Like, yes, we have broken through and done so very quickly and very, like, efficiently. But if you look here, there's a lot of dead orcs on the ground. And that is down to those missiles and down to those catapults that are just relentlessly pounding this Angband position. Ooh, another one right there. Let's see. Imagine to get my cavalry into here. Yep, slowly but surely chewing out the missile units. Trying to cut up as much of Belegoth's support units, because I'm pretty confident my ally is going to win this. Truth be told, I didn't see how bad these catapults were giving it to him until afterwards. I don't know what hit this here, but it might have been one of my mangonels. Oh yeah, Doriath now coming into position. Whiffing a couple shots there, but I did have one that hit home, and it took down a few of those heavy units. Oh, a nice hit right in the middle there, taking down a whole bunch of them. Knocks over some, but you see that about the size of the area there that it will deal the instant kill damage in. Now Doriath realizes his allies in a lot of trouble. Probably a little bit too late. He is sending some support over here. You can see some wares of Region. The Mariners of Erendil setting up. On top of that hill, it's going to give them a nice firing arc. These trolls, man, they've just been in it from the very beginning, before the rest of that army got there, and they were just able to push through and just be so disruptive. They're not exactly killing a ton of things, but damn are they annoying. Another beautiful charge here from those Lugskaraz into the Rangers of Bethalmar, absolutely gutting this Falas army. And if you look here, we start to take a pretty serious lead. 20% or so ahead. Falas is buying their ally the time that they need to maybe get some more troops into position. Yeah, okay, so there's the projectile. It looks disgusting, right? It looks like it's just slaughtering people. That was from a catapult. That was not from the... Yeah, you can see the catapult firing in the back. That was not from the Mariners. But you look at that here. Little balls of light. No one's really dying. But it is annoying. Yeah, I think he also hit some of his guys in the back, and it's going to cause them to rout. But yeah, it's just irritating. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but when you're focusing on like advancing troops like this, obviously that's extremely problematic, especially if you're trying to rush. And that's what it can be. It can be an anti-rush tool. So if we had this firing from the get-go as Angband was moving in, and maybe even some quick support from the Marksmen of Region, that's a lot of anti-rush potential that just breaks up. Yeah, see, look at that. They're not dying, but they are just being extremely hindered. That's a lot of anti-rush potential that can be used to buy you a lot of time to get things into position. So it's a weird niche thing that I've been playing around with. He actually blew up his own catapults with that. Unfortunate. Yeah, more shots there. But largely this Falas army has been destroyed. But it took a lot, man. Like, yes, there's a lot of Angband troops in here, but it was not a walk in the park. Nice shot there from my mangonel lighting one of these guys up here. Yeah, that mangonel firing back, and there's a second one over here. I've kind of split them up so they can't just be shut down by the one battery. Hopefully that's just a useful lesson in general, because we've done it a couple times here where you just bring enough things and you spread them out so that they can't all be shut down by one counter. It makes things much, much more difficult to address. Yeah. Even though it wasn't a direct hit, we managed to basically cook most of these catapults, and it's just the one that's left. In terms of the frontline engagement, not a ton has happened. Some of the marksmen came forward and got skewered by my Scar High trappers, which is a little bit of a mistake there on Rex's part. I think they also took some throwing axes. Yeah, because these axemen of the girdle basically haven't been touched. I think these boys have some throwing axes. I'm going to give it right back to these guys. They're a lot more inaccurate though. They're good when things are running at them in large, not very thin lines like this. I think actually the friendly fire from his archers is doing more than my Scar High. But they are, that being said, they are spread out, so they will be able to absorb that pretty efficiently. These Axemen now starting to take some damage. And Doriath, moving forward, they're in a bit of a bad spot here. We're significantly ahead in terms of percentages. That being said, Angband is pretty cut up, and Doriath has a lot of the really important units that just haven't been touched. There was an instance here where I managed to get in to a few of the units that he sent to support. So we'll get a nice charge there. And I think I missed it. But if you look at these dead wargs here and you look at the Tol-in-Gaurhoth, I managed to get... Oh, I'm so sad I missed it. I got a beautiful charge here. Like the perfect charge. Right into the flank of these units. My unit had great surface area, so they just crushed them. And did, I think, like 60-70% casualties almost. To the Tol-in-Gaurhoth in like a couple of seconds, and it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. I'm sad I missed it. Some of that Falas Cav still running around, trying to help the Doriath units, trying to staunch the bleeding, and they are managing to bring it back a decent amount. Like, we're not 20% ahead anymore, or I think we were even farther ahead for a while, but it's still a tough battle here for the Falathrim. There's a lot of things left over, lots of reserves, and Doriath is putting on some good pressure. Like, they're not just having it all their own way, or I'm not just having it all my own way, but they are able to put some good pressure out here. But I am holding my ground. So these Chosen here, they'll be able to hang on against those Axemen for a while. This is kind of the last... This is a very interesting moment. So they get caught on the Gijexkat as Chosen. They get hit by the fear effect from those Javies. And then they're sort of attacking while outnumbered and surrounded. And strangely enough, they rout. Just like that. They are strung out in a bunch of places and getting hit with a morale debuff. But I'm sure some people will see that and be like, how is this possible? That's how it's possible. So yeah, they end up getting routed. They had no idea these guys were here because they'd been hiding the entire time. So they thought it was just going to be, whatever, I got caught on some spears. I'll reform my unit later, and I'm going to shut down this mangonel so it can't be a problem anymore. But then this comes out of nowhere, right? The Hishbukras and those fire javelins are very, very nasty. So frontline engagement, it's not super fun. We are managing to kill off, some of the catapult crew. Angband is also over here supporting me. They got a nice charge from those Ravagers into the shield bearers. Didn't do as much as one would hope because there's also some Falathrim over here. Some survivors of that rout who have come back to support. I've got my mangonels firing overhead, so there's a little bit of support here coming in from his ally, and it's not the end of the world. It's a little bit indecisive, so I actually managed to get my Scarhide Pit fighters up here as well, and they just massacred that unit of Axemen. I really waited for quite a while and hid them back here so that they wouldn't get focused down by the amount of missiles and stuff, because we saw that in the other game as well, where Mevin had his Banes and they were kind of his win condition. For the infantry fight, the Scarhide Pit Fighters and the Ash Priests are my win condition. So I wanted to keep them hidden and healthy for absolutely as long as I can. Looks like some of the Marksmen are charging in here, but they're just getting fed into that meat grinder. Like, Berserkers, very, very scary. Once they go Berserk like this, you really want to try to address them with missiles. And of course, these guys are a missile unit, but they're looking like they're out of ammunition. So now they're charging in here. Taking a few shots from... I actually have no idea. Oh, it's probably some of my archer units. They have visually they have a fire effect, but it doesn't really do anything. A little bit of support there, but I think he realizes then that the Scarhide Pit Fighters, that's exactly what they are. It's not just like orcs. And so he's going to get out of there as quickly as he possibly can, because that's a lot of Berserkers to fight, and they will absolutely destroy those Marksmen. So he's trying to get out of there, trying to open up a lane of fire so that he can shoot the Marksmen of Region at them, which is a very good idea. Some Ravagers look like they came back from routing over here. I don't think Panthan has seen that yet. But over on this side, I've managed to kind of hold my ground a little bit. He is starting to wrap around and get around my Chosen. I've committed some of my AP Howlers to the fray as well. And now I'm starting to bring in some more reinforcements as well. So basically a full health unit of Chosen We've got some more Howlers over here, and that's going to try and like staunch the bleeding. Got my Mangonel crew as well. Those Doriath units actually came back from routing, and I threw my Hippocrates cavalry at them. There's only like 20 of them, but look at that, eh? Yeah, those Hippocrates javelins are really just kind of not very good when it comes to close combat, but they are very specialized for range, so I suppose that's reasonable. What do we got over here? Trappers. Yeah, I got trappers, long fangs. Managed to hold on to my front line. Panthan's gonna see what's going on over there with the marksman. He's gonna try and shut them down for me, which is very nice of him. I think I'm gonna throw these guys into a flank here against those spearmen, but I don't have any control of them, so this is not me. This is the AI just doing me a solid. The pit fighters getting into the rear of this Doriath position, and they're just gonna chew their way through here. The only thing that may give them pause is the Doriath and Mablung with that extra HP. And Scar High pit fighters have admittedly been fighting for a while, so it's not gonna be a cakewalk, but these spears for sure getting wiped off the map. I've got my Ash Priests in there as well. Looks like they're tossing at the Doriath and Mablung. And I'm well aware of how strong these units are. I want to weaken them. I'm not really expecting my spearmen to beat them. I would like them to just be tired and worn out and have some of the HP chipped off them before I throw my Ash Priests at them. Over here, we've managed to kind of thin out a lot of these units. Looks like some of them may be charged through to try and engage my reserves, but there's just not enough of them. Some Axe Guard, actually a little bit of a micro lapse here from Captain Gervais. These Axemen, I think, will eventually rejoin the fray. But the Falathrim have been ultimately dealt with. Absolute massacre. Like, what a shit show. That catapult, those catapults were so nicely placed. That was a brutal catapult nest, and they got a lot of kills. But Angband still has some significant forces, and they've got all things that are pretty important. So he's got Scourges that are healthy. I think he's still got his Bulldogs in here somewhere. He's definitely still got his Bulldogs. Got Tormentors, a bunch of Tormentors, Halberds, Wretches. Wretches aren't that significant. But yeah, there's the Bulldogs, and they're very healthy. I don't think they've taken a single casualty. So obviously, this game is going in a certain direction, so we're going to kick it up to full speed here. Mariners of Arendelle. I didn't even realize that they were still living. Reinforcements here in the form of Mariners of Arendelle and some champions of Eglarest coming by. And those Axemen have now been thrown into the fray against my Iron Shods. They don't really have a lot of great surface area here. There's a lot of that unit that's not fighting, unfortunately. And there's lots of reinforcements over here as well. These guys are kind of being surrounded. Yeah, no fun. No fun for them. But now we've held our ground, and it's slowly but surely beginning to turn in my favor. The Doriath and Mablung have lost, I think, about 18 models or something since we last looked at them. More Cav trying to get around the back. I'm trying to like sneak my Cav around here, but there is actually pathing that will go through these. Like a lot of these custom objects, if you can see it, like if you can see a path through it, you can go through it. So they can be interacted with in some interesting ways. But in this case, the AI really wants to path through here, and I really don't want them to do that. I want to get them out into here so I can get some nice charges and things like that. Rangers of the Girdle pulling out to just try and, temporarily stop this unit. But I don't expect they'll hang around for too long here. Yeah, even the wretched melee that is the Hippocrates that will collab should be able to deal with strung out and very depleted unit of light infantry. Off they go. They're actually not bad on a charge, so if we can get a good charge in there, which we very well might. Mariners of Arendelle trying to sell their lives dearly, but they're not going to have the opportunity. Because my workers are going to cut them to little bits there. And the crew of the famous Arendelle falls in some frozen battlefield in the north. Not exactly how it happened in the books, but pretty fun. Pretty fun to watch. Still a decent amount of elven infantry over here, but for the most part they're just being surrounded and kind of just pulled apart. Doriath and Mablung selling their lives dearly, as they do. But more and more Angband troops. Yeah, looks like they came over here and routed off a unit of Doriath spears. There go some of the marksmen as well. And it's basically game over. There goes the Fallas general. It's amazing how he managed to lose his entire army in that rout, but held on to his general down to the end. Speaking of a general getting held down to the end, there goes the Doriath and Mablung, and with the death of their leader, they are going to flee. And that's pretty well it. Not the closest game. But like I said, we did get our butts handed to us, and it's just kind of fun to watch a good plan be executed well and be successful. So I thought I would show you this one. Again, not the closest, not the most competitive game in the world, but still really cool, and has some great moments. So let's take a look here and see kind of what did what. That one unit of the Laugskaraz that got into the back. There's another one back there, but it got kind of killed. I think it was fighting a lot of cavalry and things like that, but 430, that's wild. Pit fighters did really well. They wiped out an entire unit of axemen, so that's where a lot of that comes from. 143, exactly the size of a lot of units for Doriath. That's exactly the size of their like mid-tier units. So that's how many they killed. Exactly one unit. One of the Hishpukras did pretty well. I think that's one of them was able to kind of charge and get into a few different units. The Howlers did okay. Trappers, one of them did really well, the other one didn't. The Longfangs were just kind of there to get in the way. Like, you're never going to win a game because you brought a bunch of Longfangs, but they do serve an important function, I think. And the Angband army, really torn to pieces. Had a decent amount of stuff, but otherwise, like, most of his army was killed off. So that was a really, really good, brutal match on that side of the field. Belegost's catapult was just, like, that little nest was just disgusting. So really fun to see that. In any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.